Welcome, everybody, to our webinar about digital well-being, balanced and intentional use of screens. We just want to recognize these very challenging times that we find ourselves in. Of course, prior to last week, we would have just talked about how challenging it was due to COVID, a pandemic, social distancing and distance learning. And now with the events in Minneapolis and St. Paul and across the country, we find ourselves in even more challenging times. So with that, we want to work toward well-being and understanding that we are experiencing some hard situations that challenge our well-being. So thank you to EO for bringing us on for this family webinar. We are really excited to share what has been our passion and to bring that to you. So who we are, I'm Katherine Meyers, and Marie is with us as well. We are the co-founders of Live More Screen Less. We are entrepreneurs ourselves, and that's something that we might not have seen happen 10 or so years ago. I'm a veteran English teacher, spent 25 years in the high school classroom in both public and private schools. And I am an early adopter of technology, particularly in the classroom. And over the years, especially in the last kind of 5 years, I started to see really how heavily that was weighing on students in so many ways. And we'll talk a lot about what it is that we're seeing the effects of screen, but just from my educator standpoint, certainly cyberbullying is a problem, easy access to cheating, and the distraction is phenomenal, and the ways it weighs on mental health. So Marie and I joined together so that we could address what we see as the misuse and overuse of screens and its effects, but to make a positive turning point on it. So we are all about digital well-being. We also have with us today a member of our youth board, Cece Hawley, and Cece put together this video. So as a way to introduce Cece, here is an introduction to the 5 high school students that cooperate along with our board of directors and with me and Marie and our college student interns. And I just wanted to mention that Miles was planning on joining us today, but due to the unrest in our cities, he's not able to be with us tonight. But you'll be able to get to see him in a little bit because he's also featured in a video that we have put together, that we've made.
So hi, I'm Marie. Thanks for carving out the time this evening with us. I wanted to just share with you the values that guide our work and our organization, and just want to let you know that we are engaged with young people and do that in a very deep and authentic way. We're youth inspired. We want and need youth to be involved in solving the problems associated with screen misuse and overuse. We're also guided by the research. Early on, KK and I did a really deep dive into the research to have a better understanding, to be able to share out with all of you, with our communities, what the research reveals and what it doesn't. We listen to communities. Listening is at the core of our work, and you'll hear that throughout the course of our presentation this evening as we share some data and stories with you from people, young people, teachers, and parents. And we are also flexible and collaborative in our work. And we work in the spirit of co-creating solutions to the problems and tailoring and adapting to fit the needs and interests of our communities. So digital well-being, what is it? This is how we defined it, at seeking ways to balance how our use of screens enhances how we think and feel and communicate, focus, learn, engage, love, and sleep. And I will say it took a little time for us to come to this. We spent a lot of time early on, again, doing research and talking to folks and doing surveys, and we really believe strongly about approaching this issue in a very holistic manner. So we'll break this down a little bit for you as we move through the presentation. Our goals for this evening are to understand the methods that the tech industry uses to keep us attached to our devices, to recognize the effects of screen overuse, to equip you all with tips and tools and strategies that you can use in your home, and to offer some time at the end for a discussion. The format for this evening is a 45-minute presentation. I will really try to keep it to that, and allowing the last 15 minutes for discussion and Q&A.
So before I go on, Cece, I'd like you just to introduce yourself. I know that you'll be speaking later and we saw you in the video, but we'll just have you say hello to the group.
Hello, I'm Cece Hawley, and I'm a senior at Mounds Park Academy. And I got involved with Live More because Miss Meyers used to be my old English teacher. And I really liked how we're used to being told that technology is really bad for you and just get off your screen, it's that dang phone. And so I thought it was really refreshing hearing a message where it's not all bad, but you just need to balance it. So that's why I mostly got involved with Live More.
You didn't really mean I was like your old English teacher, right? Just former.
No. I'm a past English teacher.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Cece. Okay, so to just add a little humor, certainly we know that when we were told to social distance and distance learn, that screens have become a big part of our life. So cutting back 10 hours max, which is supposed to be humorous, but maybe there's a bit more reality there. And I don't know if you're like me, but boy, the days are hard to keep track of. So it's just kind of a day. And then to honor moms in the group as we are talking to parents, we just have a little humor there about where we might be able to send our moms for some quarantine.
So I just want to acknowledge that we are living through an unbelievably stressful time as parents due to sheltering in place. And we're assuming multiple roles. We're parents, workers, teachers now because our young people are learning from home. We're playmates, we're caregivers. And as we're talking to parents in the last 2 months, we're really hearing from them that they end up feeling really badly because they're not feeling like they're doing any one role really well or as well as they want to. And this is through no fault of their own. And we're here to say, drop the guilt and to just recognize that we are in this unprecedented time with COVID-19. Also, to recognize that no one taught us, our parenting generation, how to parent in the digital age. We are learning as our young people are learning and managing these devices. So I believe it to be one of the most challenging issues of for parents these days. So what we want to bring to you is information to shed light on why it is so hard to put our screens away, and present a parent framework for you to consider with your children, and then to offer tips and tools. So,
sorry, Marie. Sorry about that, Marie. Yeah, okay. We'll go on here.
So just to give you a sense, maybe you can relate to some of these statements. We did a survey of middle school and high school parents in the spring. and just ask them, what is it like? Just give us a phrase or give us a word. What is it like to be a parent and manage digital media? And we've got a lot of responses, and you can just get a sense by looking at these words and phrases that it's stressful. It's stressful. But it's like the final comment there, it is a necessary evil. It's something that we have to journey together and learn how to do. So we use this data as a way to inform what we want to bring to parent communities. So you'll hear more of that information later on. But I'd like to just take a moment, because we are under incredible stress these days. And we want you to take a moment to just take a step back and take a deep breath. So if you're able to stand up right now, that'd be great. If you could stand where you are, if you're able, and just rest your hands at your sides. And then just take your shoulders and lift them up toward your ears and drop them. And then do that one more time. Lift your shoulders up to your ears and drop them. And if you're comfortable, close your eyes, and I want you to take 3 long, deep breaths. And as you take a breath, inhale, count to 3, hold, and then release. Do that 3 times. And when you're done, you can have a seat if you were sitting before. We like to integrate some of these practices into our presentations as a reminder that we, as parents, we need to take care of ourselves. And there's such a simple tool that we can all use, and we can also teach that to our children, and that's just the very simple act of breath, of breathing, of taking time throughout your day. It induces the relaxation response. So especially if you're feeling stressed, to move your shoulders, if you get tension in your shoulders, and take those deep breaths as one first step to digital well-being. So now we're going to dig into the content about the effects that screens can have on our well-being. And you'll see this, we call it the bubble sheet, that screen overuse and misuse can affect us in many different ways. And we'll be addressing some of the categories and how screens affect our physical, mental, social, cognitive well-being in our presentation this evening.
I'll just add to that the research is young, and so we do speak to this being correlative. Like Marie mentioned earlier, we are doing a lot of listening, particularly to young people. So a lot of this comes from our listening in focus groups and discussion groups and surveys. And so we're hearing what young people are experiencing. So this is one visual for you to see kind of what's moving up and what's moving down. And this is another one. So to kind of look at what should be a wellness wheel and then say, how are screens affecting our well-being? I want to start first just at the top with physical. Recently, we had over 30 or 40 submissions from young people that were talking about distance learning and what is it like being on screens. We are collecting youth voice, and you can see that on our website. And many of those students talked about headaches. And with that, because school, for many of them, moved to screens, the positive is they're trying to find ways to get off their screens. And Cece will be telling us a bit about that later. But like Marie said, one simple well-being tip is to breathe. Another simple digital well-being tip is to look away from your screens. And we're going to practice that a little bit later. Mental health is certainly significantly compromised due to screens. We are seeing that it's has a more proclivity in females and also in kind of underserved populations. But it's affecting everyone. Adults. Marie and I gave a presentation in Minneapolis in January, and there was I'd say a 65-year-old man that at the end said, please come back. I need your support, because he was feeling so drawn to his screen and knew that it was affecting his mental well-being. Social skills. Young people are telling us they want to be taught social skills, that should be a class in school, communication skills, because they are recognizing that as a generation that they are missing out on those skills. And we know that loneliness is increasing. We know that loneliness is always a factor as people age, but recently we're seeing it in our young people and our young adults. And again, correlationally, we can say that screens are creating some of that loneliness. And to quote a few of the young people that we talked to in a discussion group, they've mentioned it as a wall and a barrier. And emotionally, we know that we have the world in our pockets, right? With our cell phones, we have access to so much good with our screens, and with that good also comes some inappropriate material. So the emotional costs can be high. And then lastly, the cognitive effects. And again, we'll be talking more about that, but just the information overload. We've had a couple young people say that just that 24/7 news is really impacting them with their thinking as well as their mental well-being. And then putting sleep on top of it, that we know that without good sleep, that all of these factors become more challenging to feel well. And so again, one simple step we have to offer is that screens should be out of the bedroom at night, because we see that they prolong the hour before sleep happens by an hour. They interrupt sleep by young people listening for a beep or a text. And then it also is creating situations where it's the first thing we do in the morning and the last thing at night. And so it's taking away from just that space of being and not allowing our brains to prepare for sleep or our brains to prepare for the day. So why is it that we're so drawn to screens if we know we are seeing kind of some of these negative effects? I want to talk a little bit here about persuasive design. And you'll see the two images. The one at the top is a slot machine and the one at the bottom is a cell phone. So slot machines are the most addictive of the gambling device because they're solitary, rapid, and continuous. It's so easy to pull the lever. And they are designed using a variable design ratio, meaning we don't know when the 3 cherries are going to bounce across the screen. And that creates, our dopamine gets us excited to keep coming back. Smartphones, we can see, kind of operate in a similar way. If we think about that solitary component, that it is rapid, right? Everything can happen so fast. Information, just Google it, it's right there. And it's continuous. Also, if we just look at the colors, the design of it, we know that red is going to alert us and draw us in. So one well-being tip that we offer is to consider grayscale. So if you just look at these 2 photos, I remember the first time I saw it, I almost just took a deep breath the grayscale really loses its attraction. So 2 things here. It's a good way to lessen our draw to our screen, and it also proves that the behavior design, it is intended to keep us enticed with our screen. Additionally, there are factors kind of baked in that design us to stay longer. And out of the Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, we know that BJ Fogg has created kind of the behavioral psychology that keeps us motivated, and it can be used for good. So maybe some of you use exercise apps or calorie counters. These also are using kind of the same behavior psychology for well-being. But the same psychology is used to keep us addicted to our screens. And the formula is simple: high motivation, prompts that are easy to swipe or scroll, and the ability to do it is also simple. So we think about just that auto scroll and auto play make it so easy for us to keep on our screens. Sean Parker, along with a few other Silicon Valley execs, maybe you've heard of a few more, speaks in this brief 1-minute video about the design of Facebook to keep us coming back.
When Facebook was getting going, I had these people who would come up to me and they would say, you know, I'm not on social media. And I would say, okay, you know, you will be. And then they would say, no, I value my real life interactions. I value the moment. I value presence, and I value intimacy. And I would say, well, you're a conscientious objector. That's okay. You don't have to participate, but you know, we'll get you eventually. and like, I don't know if I really understood the consequences of what I was saying. Because the unintended consequences of a network when it grows to 1 billion or 2 billion people, and it literally changes your relationship with society, with each other, with you know, it probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. You know, if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, you know, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, you know, and it's me, it's Mark, it's Kevin Systerman, Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
So our human vulnerabilities is certainly something that as parents we want to attend to with our children, because we know them best. And we also know that we are social beings. So what is it that we want out of social media is that social connection. So that's the good part of it. But the part for us to be aware and to help make our children aware is the design behind it. That if that starts interfering with our well-being, then we need to stand up against the design of it. As a teacher, I know the importance of attention, right? So if I'm in front of students teaching, I want their attention. And we are up against an attention economy. Because I want you to think about the number of apps that you have or you use or your children use and how much money you are paying to use those apps. If we're not paying with our monetary resources, we're paying with a resource that is even more special, and that is our attention. The quote that's on the screen here is Netflix saying that sleep is the greatest enemy to Netflix. So autoplay is there, that it can just continue to scroll. And that is certainly affecting our well-being. And I think Cece's gonna share with her a student's perspective.
So here it's saying, I'm concerned about how we're making the world more distracted. And I can personally vouch on saying, yes, technology has definitely made the world more distracted, but I would like to speak upon the whole virtual learning aspect. Since we've been moved to virtual learning since March, distraction is the biggest enemy, I think, against a student right now. It's so easy to just go on your Zoom call with your teacher and you can literally just click away and go on a different tab, or you can just go on your phone on the side, and it's a lot more difficult than being distracted in school, even though that would also be an issue. But it's definitely still a huge problem, and it's definitely a bigger problem now with virtual learning.
Thanks, Cece.
Thanks, Cece and KK. I'd like to spend the next few minutes talking about the role of social media and the impact that it's having on mental health. And I'm sure you all have seen headlines in the newspaper and common popular press, as well as we've seen in the research literature, that there's a correlation between the use of social media and increased anxiety, depression, and even suicide ideation. We have followed closely the Minnesota Student Health Survey that showed increase in all three of those areas. So we're really concerned, knowing, of course, there are other factors, but believing strongly that screen misuse and overuse is a contributing factor to these mental health issues. So as KK mentioned earlier, the studies are correlational, but we also need to attend to what it's pointing to. And study after study has shown the issue of sleep as very critical to overall well-being. And what we know from the research too is that if a young person is not getting enough sleep, then they're even more prone to anxiety and depression. So it gets back to that sleep issue that's just a big part of our digital well-being focus for the evening. I did also want to mention just briefly too that there is a longitudinal study that's happening that's going to follow young people for 10 years from 9 and 10 years old. It started 2 years ago. They're going to follow them for 10 years. So we will get more information that's more causal. And they're looking at screen use as one factor there. But this slide here has to do with what parents are seeing. They are concerned about the negative impact that cell phone is having on young people's mental health. So parents are really concerned. Young people are really concerned. We're concerned. The next slide, there's a correlation between screen time and more time alone, and that social exclusion, that feeling of being excluded, which a lot of young people and adults, I hear this from adults too, seeing images on social media and not being included, and how that really hurts. And the studies show that it's just as hard as physical pain, or you feel it just as much as physical pain. And so just something to really attend to as we think about wanting to provide some limits for our children and to really protect their sleep and protect their mental health. And KK, I don't know if you want to add anything else to this one.
I think what I'd like to add is just to encourage parents that when we see our children on our phones, we, like Cece mentioned, like the darn phone or the darn screen, like we kind of have this dismissive, like, oh, they're always on their phone. And we'd really like to have all of us, parents, aunts, teachers, everyone in the community advocating to help young people find that balance. And so that kind of sets up what we'll be talking about with our parent framework, but is to really kind of lean into this and to talk with your children about that and not just dismiss it that, well, that's just what they do. I just want to take a minute here, Glenda, with the time. I know we got started a little bit later and it's 7:45, so I want to just see if we need to rush through some things or how we're adjusting the time.
Yeah, we did get started a little late, and I know some of the families are waiting to go outside and play too. So I think we should finish up and maybe just a couple questions and then call it a night. Is that okay?
Well, I think then with that, is it okay if I'd like Cece to speak to a few things and then we'll do that?
Sure, perfectly.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I'll just move through then some slides. I do want to just stop at this one to say that please go to our website to see our listen in video. So we have a series of 5 videos and we're showing you one of those 5. And I don't want you to miss out on that. It says it's pretty profound to hear what 11 young people have to say about social media. So we were going to practice what we preach, to look away from our screen. So I do want to just give you something to tuck away. After 20 minutes of screen, look away for 20 seconds, 20 feet away, because we are seeing a rise in myopia in our young population, and headaches are certainly a result of staring at screens. So like we said at the beginning, I think we said that we'll be sending you an email and it will include our parent framework. And our parent framework is to listen, limit, lead, and love. And we're kind of rushing through this, but there they are, to start with listening. And we know that young people want to be seen and feel safe and be soothed. And that's what we do as parents. And I think Cece maybe wanted just to give some advice about how you limit as a parent. So I'll let her speak to this one.
I think limiting is definitely a hard topic because you don't want to do too much to almost encourage the kids to do more because they would want to disobey. But we need to remember that like empathy and supporting young people is the #1 concern. When we were moved to virtual learning, it was very hard for, especially my friends, since we were seniors and it was our last year together. It was very hard for us to realize that we weren't going back to school together and we weren't going to be able to be in classrooms anymore. And so what we decided to do when we first got into Zoom was to schedule Zoom lunches. And we actually would do Zoom lunches every day because we just missed everyone so much and missed that time to just talk to each other. And my parents were a little concerned since I would never leave my room because I would do classes and then go straight to lunch and then straight to classes. So they asked me about it, and instead of saying you need to get off your computer, you need to leave your room, they understood where I was coming from and the need for having that social interaction, even those through my computer. So they were able to empathize with me and then support my growth by kind of setting a goal for me by saying, okay, maybe you can have virtual Zoom lunches 3 times a week. And so we were able to come to a conclusion together.
Nice, that's a great story. Thanks, Cece. I just want to share with you that if you follow us on Instagram or if you look on our Young People's Blogs page, you will see that both Cece and her sister are highlighted. So her sister submitted a blog to us about Cece being helping her with her screen time. and providing that leadership and helping her limit. So I just want to use that as a bridge to say that we need role models. That's our lead part, and then also to encourage to limit. And where we can start is screen-free zone. So we're trying to just make it so that you end this webinar and you have practical things you can do. And so we would suggest screen-free zones, kitchens and mealtime, bedrooms for sure, and cars, because we know that's a really great place to engage with our kids. And then I'll just say that another thing that you can find on our website are our tips for digital well-being. And I'm going to have Cece share a little bit of what she's been doing, as you heard her talk so much about being on screens, and what she's done to really embrace some digital well-being.
Sorry for talking so much about virtual learning and the shelter at home, but it honestly is what we're living in right now. So it's going to be a lot of what I'm talking about. And when I realized I was staying in the entire day and also my sports were canceled, I realized that I had so much time after classes to do something. And if I stayed inside the rest of the day, I realized my mood and my just general happiness would not be as high as it would as when I went outside. So I realized that the biggest, for me, the top three is connecting to nature, moving, and creating. So for connecting to nature and moving, they kind of connect with each other. But creating was a big thing for me. I restarted playing the piano and restarted painting again. And I just realized that I do need to get off my technology because it can do wonders for your mood and mental health.
Thanks, Cece. And that's just awesome, because that's being a leader, right? We're hearing from young people that it's good and you can find those things to do again by creating. And our last tip for parents is to love. We know that you know your child best. And as we think about what Sean Parker talked about with the design and how it is that it's engineered, that it's up to us to help our young people come out of that. And just a reminder too, in this time of social distancing, that we all need touch. And that can be with our teens or teenagers. It can be, a high five or just messing up their hair, but something to engage with that touch, because that is a primary way that we show compassion and love by doing that. And we have, again, an email that will be coming your way so you can connect with us. So in the middle of this page, you'll see that we have blogs written for adults and for parents and teachers to consider. And we also have, like we've mentioned, young people's blogs, and Cece has written one of those as well. Marie writes a book review, and so you can find that there. And our newsletter, we'd love for you to subscribe to that. Follow us on Instagram at Live More. We have young people. Our youth board is helping us with that. So inspiring ways for you to consider something else besides your screen. And then Facebook is the way we are connecting with parents. So we have a lot of tips there. And Glenda, I will turn that back to you to see how we want to wrap up tonight.
Yeah, okay. Well, so just so you know, we've got a couple of the participants are now panelists, so anybody can speak up. I thought that was really, really cool. Looking away for 20 seconds, 20 feet away. Huge takeaway. I love it. I don't know who is out there. If anyone has any questions, they can just unmute themselves and ask the panel here.
I have a quick question, and maybe you've already addressed this with a couple of the tactics in regards to getting up and moving and the trick that Glenda just mentioned there. But, for this new world that we live in, spending so much time on screens all day and Zoom fatigue is a real thing. What do you suggest for some ways, maybe you're in between meetings or in between Zoom calls, ways to kind of reset and come back and, ensure you're not burned out and experiencing that fatigue?
Well, I'm not sure who wants to address that, but I'll just start with kind of considering like what Cece was talking about with she's learning on a screen and then she has her cell phone and there might be another screen, is to temper that. So when you intentionally leave one screen, is it to go to another screen? So how is it that if you need to communicate with someone, is it through a text and now you're looking at a screen, or could you make that phone call? Marie and I do walking meetings as much as we can. So we kind of make a list ahead of time and decide, like, do we need to be sitting down looking at a screen or looking at one another, or can we walk and go? So those are two things that I might suggest, is just being aware of breaking from a screen to another screen. And then what is it that where can you walk?
Yeah, and for shorter periods of time too, if you have the flexibility during the day, you can set a timer for yourself so that you get up and just move your body. And ideally, if you're able to step outside to get some fresh air, and even just walking around the block quickly is a really great way to just get that reset and get some fresh air, as well as clear your head.
Yeah, it's a great point. I guess I approached this new world that we live in thinking that video calls were always superior to just an audio call, but now it's to the point where there may be value in breaking out from, not using video and just going back to that plain audio and giving yourself a break from that screen.
Yes.
Yeah. One other thing I'll add to that too is Marie and I have made ad hoc standing desks. So it's easy to do. It's a box, it's a toaster, it's something. So another way to just be moving is to stand if you do have to be on those Zoom calls.
So guys, I've got one question in the chat here. What reaction are you getting from the tech companies and teachers?
Oh, I'll start with teachers. They are absolutely overwhelmed and worried, very worried about the effects that screens are having on students' learning and attention and mental health. And they are crying out for support. And that is something that we would love to have you partner with us on as parents, is to contact your schools and ask what it is. We know you have technology. What is it that you're doing for digital well-being? And we would like to partner with schools to help them create that digital well-being plan. And it can be as simple as what we just mentioned too, right? Like, do all your teachers know to recommend to students that after 20 minutes of staring at a screen, you have to look away? So there are a lot of simple tips. And like Cece mentioned, it doesn't mean that technology is bad. It means that we have to be sure that we are doing this well to mitigate the effects that we are seeing on our young people and on our society.
I can say from my perspective, my teachers are really tired as well. It's really hard on them. My school specifically, we went from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. So it was really hard being at your computer that whole time, tuning in for an hour and 30-minute classes. And so what we decided to do is our school actually allowed us to have Wednesdays off to catch up on work or just get off the screen. And then we also had classes shortened to where our homework would actually be able to be done in class rather than having to go to class for like 8 hours a day and then do homework afterwards. So I think a lot of schools have been able to look at that and make adjustments to their school schedule. And for tech companies, actually, it's been a really cool thing for our band, at least. There's this place called Sound Trap or something like that, and they actually opened up all their services for free because they realized that a lot of classes aren't going to need help with virtual learning. So I think a lot of tech companies have been very helpful with opening their resources to schools.
So there's another question here. How much time would you recommend an 11, 8, and 5-year-old should be on screens each day? Again, really hard for today, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, we know the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with their screen time recommendation. And then with that, the World Health Organization has suggested no screens for 0 to 2. But with that, then the AAP is sort of trying to balance that to say that not all screen time is equal. And we would really agree. And I imagine that all of us would think about that. So FaceTiming grandma, is that the same screen time as Fortnite for, a teenager? And so I think it really is incumbent about parents, again, to go back to, your child well, and their vulnerabilities. And if it becomes that it is hard for you to take that screen away, then that is a time to sit down and discuss how is it that we are going to make that transition so that it isn't affecting their ability to go and do what they would like to do. So with our framework to listen, limit, lead, and love, like Cece said, with her parents, listening to her and hearing, why it is that she felt like she needed to be on that screen, and then coming to a compromise. We have some resources so that we think that every family should have a parent contract or family contract, so that it really is clear how and when we are all going to use our screens. And I think it might be appropriate here just to add that we know that young people call their parents out fast about how often parents are on their screens. And they're very quick to say that my parents are more addicted up to their screens than we are. So we also think it's really incumbent that we are all leading on this. And with our digital well-being tips that we mentioned, those are on our website, that we would like parents to start with that and then kind of work into the family.
So on that same line, there's a question about how much, and I think you might have touched on this, but how much time before bed should we turn off the screens so that it doesn't affect sleep? And are screens all screens? Does that include TV screens as well? I mean, is there any statistics with that?
I think the general recommendation for screen time leading up to bedtime is to get away from your screens at least an hour before bedtime, if it's possible. So doesn't disrupt, and make it harder for a child to get to sleep. And as far as TV time, I think it's another screen, right? So if it's possible to avoid that an hour before or half hour before, it's better for the child. And also we talk a lot about just having those rituals before bedtime too, that take some time. So getting a book out and reading and creating rituals so that the child gets used to these as signals that it's time to get to bed to help them fall asleep. So having non-screen related rituals as it leads to bedtime is also a good practice.
And I'll just add too that it is, all screen time is not alike, which was kind of my earlier point. And the same might be true here. So, for example, if a meditation app is used on a screen, does that make screen time bad? So maybe kind of the question is, what is it that we need to do to prepare ourselves and our body and our mind to rest because of how imperative it is that we rest? And so that might just be another way that a family can have that discussion about what are those good habits that we all like to do as we prepare to go to sleep. So kind of in that whole sleep hygiene idea, like Marie was mentioning.
So I have one more question. Selfishly, I would like to know, from all of you and Cece too, is there open discussion about the fact that what we see on Facebook and that is not always real life? I mean, people aren't going to post pictures of necessarily bad things happening to them. So is there open conversation amongst, like Cece, you and your friends, that they're only showing the good, and which is great, but their lives, that doesn't mean their lives are perfect and my life isn't? Do you guys talk about that?
I think definitely in middle school it was a really huge issue. especially since everyone's just becoming like who they are and developing and growing themselves. So I think social media was definitely an added on pressure. I think as I've gotten older, I've definitely become more aware that everything on social media is a picture perfect frame. Like, I definitely used to be really aware about what I was posting, and I would I would shy away from posting too, because I didn't want it to be like, it wasn't Instagram worthy. But as I've gotten older, I have kind of loosened that part of myself, just because I realized that it doesn't really matter. And
Well,
that was just more of a self-realization, I would say.
yeah. So I understand the maturity level in that, but I'm just wondering if there's open conversation amongst the masses that, guys, do you understand that this is picture perfect? This isn't real life.
I would say yes. There's a lot of conversation between teachers and the students. Not a lot within the middle school community, I would say. So
Okay.
it's definitely not between the peers.
Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, Glenda, that we've done some work with sociology class at the University of Minnesota, and those college students talked a lot about the lack of authenticity on social media. And we were kind of taken aback at how hard it is for college students to navigate their different profiles and the way that they have to appear on different apps, different platforms change, and the word authentic continued to come up in that class of college age students.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, I've been the chattiest person here. Is there anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, we will thank you very much for taking your evening to spend with us. We sure appreciate it. And the video is recorded. The presentation has been recorded, so I'm sure I'll get a lot of requests to hear that. And your information will be sent out to the group. And appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so
We
much.
appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You as well.